from there. Thank you.
I'm currently a fellow at Yankee Institute, which is a public policy think tank, nonpartisan in Connecticut. But I was also a union president in the city of New Haven and a union rep for 16 years. And I happened to win a United States Supreme case, a landmark case, versus Stefano.
So you wrote an article recently for the Connecticut Sentinel, which was really impactful, and you went after the labor issues inside the fire department in a recent incident in April at a conference. What happened?
It was really a mind-blowing interaction, Todd, like something that was almost surreal. As I was in the green room, and this wasn't some place where emotions would be high in a bar. This was at 8 a.m. in a room full of dignitaries, including the governor of Indiana and the mayor of Indianapolis, and fire service leaders from around the country. And I saw the general president of the IFF come in, and I'm a board member of Fire Engineering in that magazine, and that one of the advisors for that conference. And I just said, "Hey, Ed, can I talk to you for a second?" And I was completely polite. This wasn't the time to get into a debate. And I even started off with something positive. I said, I really love how the union changed its position on forever chemicals in our gear. I really think there's an opportunity for you, Ed, to speak up for the firefighters that have been thrown away as trash for the COVID mandate. And he turned his body to me, which I thought was strange. And he said something about being a city kid. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to get anywhere with him. So I was on to the next thing. And I was going to get a cup of coffee. And next thing you know, I guess somebody went up and shook his hand. And as he was shaking that individual's hand and introducing himself, out of nowhere, he just started wrenching the person's hand and lunged towards me, called me the CS word, and just wanted to fight me in the parking lot, and said that if I don't get you now, I'll get you later. And something I wrote about in my book, Command Presence, is somebody comes at you in a debate, or somebody comes at you in that type of hostile way, don't respond. That only escalates it. Simply ask a question. So I actually lowered my voice and said, "You won't come on my show and debate me." And that actually raised him. It made no sense to me. It wasn't like a confrontation. And he kind of lunged, and then somebody had to get in between us and completely de-escalate it. And then I walked away, and I couldn't believe that a tantrum happened with somebody who's the general president of all the firefighters in America. God, it was mind-blowing what happened. And, as Margaret Thatcher used to say, if you got to tell somebody you're a lady, you're probably not. So this really exposed his ego, and it's just no place at FDIC. Okay to debate, but I wasn't even trying to debate or disagree with him. I was trying to get a cup of water.
So a reaction like that tells me that he was didn't want to talk about something, or it's kind of a way to avoid the subject, or he knew you were onto something and wanted to just shut that down. Is that how you see it?
That's how I see it. And I didn't really put two and two together until I got back to Washington, D.C. It was almost like a year ago. I wrote an article for National Review on the Jack Hughes case against Ed Kelly in the International. And Jack Hughes was a Harvard graduate before it went crazy. My boss went to Harvard too before it went crazy. And he had decades of financial experience. And I think this was like later in life, like his retirement gig, like, hey, I want to go help firefighters at. So I think he came to the IFF with great intentions. And he's like, let's put together financial products for firefighters, whether it's car insurance, auto insurance, deferred comp, investment programs. And he had the background to make a positive impact. And when he allegedly was said, well, you can only bring in companies if they're given a $250,000 kickback to union coffers. He said, whoa, wait a second here. I'm going to risk my license. This isn't good for your members. We want to put forth the best product. And Todd, you would think that Ed would say, oh, thanks for exposing this. We need to do the very best for our members. Nope. Instead, he fired them. And to just look, when I started doing some digging for the National Review, it blew my mind to find out that the stuff that they expose on their website alone says that they charge a fee of 20% for any product. That's besides any alleged kickback. That's just your regular firefighter running into a burning building, answering that call for a heart attack, going to a car accident, who's just trying to do a great job for the community, wants to get a good deferred comp program, wants car insurance. And they're not researching. They see that this is recommended by the International Association of Firefighters. They're telling their wife, hey, go ahead, or their husband, go ahead and get us that insurance. They're going to get us a good deal. 20%, that's a big, the mob would be proud of.
Yeah, totally. So, we're talking about conflict of interest today. That's obviously what's happening. And it's throughout our government, but there, where people are supposed to, trust the union to protect them and to take care of their long-term goals, as you say. I mean, it's just not happening because these guys are getting, compensated elsewhere. Is that essentially what's happening?
Absolutely. And it's not just one thing. It's like it's a system of ethical lapses, greed, and alleged corruption. I mean, a perfect example, and this isn't just Frank Ricci coming up with this stuff. The documents I found are actually signed by Ed Kelly when he was the treasurer of the IFF, where we're coming up on the summer months, Todd, right now. I see you look like you're in a lovely place, and you're going to see firefighters across this country with a boot standing in the road, risking getting hit by traffic. I used to be one of them. I used to wear my helmet, talk to the kids, and we would ask the public to put money in the boot for sick kids and adults stricken with that horrible, debilitating disease, MDA. People know it as Jerry's kids back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
What do you call it? We used to tell people, and I was a union rep, I would tell people 100% of this money goes to the MDA. So we would be committing fraud and we didn't even know it. So even as a union official, I didn't know it, and I kept saying it. And then I started looking online for the IFF and MDA to see if they made any public statements about this money that was in the boot that goes to MDA, and then it gets funneled back through to the IFF, and they actually report it on their labor filings with the government. But here's the problem. Mm-hmm. Most firefighters out there, most union members, they don't even know what an LM2 is. And here's an example. I work for a think tank now. I didn't know what LM2 was until after I left the fire service. So, and the LM2s were designed to curb and root out union corruption, to actually protect union members. And yet union members are unaware of them. There's so many loopholes in them. They bury all this stuff after entry. So it's like hidden in plain sight, but you really need to know what you're looking for to hold the unions accountable, Todd.
So the Connecticut legislature is looking to pay striking workers. What do you think about that? Is that a good thing, or what's your opinion?
Okay. As I said, as a union rep, as somebody who's pro-workers, okay, we're seeing a turn even in the Republican Party and President Trump trying to support workers, trying to find that balance of supporting business, but being respectful for the men and women that work hard for this country. I actually walked the picket line with Sikorsky, and I took my kid out of school to show what standing up for something meant one day, and I had my kid on my shoulders, Todd, and Jimmy Hoffa Jr. given a speech of all people at Sikorsky, and he called me up and actually signed my kid's sign, and the Hartford Courant wrote an article about it. I still have it. I stood with striking workers for Stop the Shop. But this is totally different. This is the government putting their hand on the scale, picking the winners and losers, and trying to actually encourage labor unrest. When you were a kid, Todd, before you went in the military, and thank you so much for your service, politicians used to go to strikes to try to get labor and management back to the table. We don't see that now. Now politicians go to strikes to get photo ops, right? They're always there. We're just standing with the workers. No, we want to get labor and management back to the table. So why this is important, and I know that you have viewers on this podcast around the country, and they may be saying, oh, it's a Connecticut thing. No, this isn't a Connecticut thing, because if you look at bad public policy, where do they try it out first? California and Connecticut. It's like a vice that squeezes out the rest of the country. This is where it starts. So we have to stop bad public policy here. We want to support workers, but the government should not be paying striking workers. And ironically, this will blow your mind. The president of the Senate in Connecticut when advocating for this bill, Todd, he actually said my father and mother had to make a hard decision to go on strike when he worked for Winchester in New Haven. But the part that he left out was Winchester closed because of labor unrest. Winchester's not there anymore. It went worldwide. It's like you're using the very example that ruined a great Haven neighborhood that used to employ people from the suburbs and people from the inner city. Now that neighborhood, I was a firefighter in that neighborhood, great people, but it's plagued by drugs, crimes, and fire.
Let me ask you, I mean, you're tied into that labor movement. Are people waking up? You just said that they were using an old example that doesn't work anymore. Is the rank and file, Joe Bag of Donuts on the street, does he understand the lies that are coming out of the Connecticut legislature and the government and across the land from, parts of our government? Are they waking up? Are the scales falling off their eyes, if you will?
Todd, I think you're 100% right. The rank and file's waking up, but the way that unions are organized at your local level, if you see a local president for their local union, they were voted by like democracy. All the union members vote. The issue with our unions, teachers unions, we got great teachers out there. We got great firefighters, great cops. The problem isn't the rank and file. The problem is the system's rigged. So it's a delegate system. So somebody who's on the local level, who gained all this support, who's been out there fighting corruption, fighting for their members' rights, wages, hours, and working conditions, they can't get ahead in the delegate system. So it's like a Marxist system where only the people at the top who are wined and dined and travel all over the country get to vote for their international president. So the members understand it, but they're boxed out of making real change and real reform by the delegate system.
So what's the way forward? I mean, we see that in the political parties, right? I mean, the GOP has the same issues where they're boxed out by the leadership and nobody can move up and get and therefore get the levers of power where they can make good decisions for the people. So how do you deal with that inside of labor?
Well, using a political example, look what Donald Trump was able to do by going to all the different media sources, doing podcasts, local papers, getting the word out. So, we just need to keep doing what we're doing, and the media and what you do, Todd, not only what you did for the country in the military for special ops as a pilot, but what you're doing here in these types of publications and giving a platform where people can speak about issues and be challenged on them is so important to get the word out to everybody. You're doing great work, and please continue doing.
Well, thank you.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
So we are in the factory in Kentucky. This is Alp World HQ, and we are at the end of the packing line. So I'm going to show you how it works. We have a card, throw it in there. There's a packing slip, and then you have the Alp. And 4, but that seems honestly like a lot. 3 now, but it's good. You just pack a punch that, for a normal nicotine brand, it'd be like 8. We think 3 is fine. Next one. Again, 4. Let's throw 3 in just to keep it fair. Okay? There you go. So you can see you can get fast at this. And really, it's just a matter of repetition. This is kind of the assembly line that, Henry Ford devised so long ago.
Tucker, stealing all the Alp again.
We are out in the field, literally right now, meeting with people and meeting with sources, and that sometimes provides tech glitches. But thank you for staying with us here. One more question. Tell us about your lawsuit, the DEI SCOTUS case. Tell us about that, because that was really a big deal, right?
Todd, I want to drag this back to you in the lawsuit. So
sure.
In 2003, when we and whites, blacks, and Hispanics, we all took a test, and the test was for promotion in the fire service. And this was a test where they gave you the reading list. It was based off our own rules and regulations. It measured the skills, knowledge, and ability that you want for a fire officer, somebody who's going to have to make almost perfect decisions based off imperfect information. No time to look anything up in the book. We want the very best leaders, regardless of race. So we took the test, and the city reduced us down to immutable characteristics and basically treated us all like trash and threw out the results of the test. We fought it. Now, this was before even anybody was talking about DEI. This is in 2003. We were on the forefront. We were alone, battling alone. One of our members, Ben Vargas, who happened to be Hispanic, ended up going in a restroom to take a pee. And the next thing you know, he was beaten unconscious and woken up in a pool of blood, reported on by the New York Times, and he testified before Congress about it as well. The fact of the matter is, we went to the local court. They threw our case out, federal case. Then we went to the Second Circuit in Manhattan, and Sonia Sotomayor tried to bury our case. She tried to hide our case. She dismissed it in an unpublished summary order saying our case had no merit. And here's the funny thing. This is how pernicious the courts are and what we see with these national injunctions and things of that nature. Instead of just ruling against us where the entire Second Circuit would get a look at the decision, she did that unpublished summary order, meaning it won't get circulated. So our case was thrown out to the spin of lost causes. We were done. We were financially, all in trouble at the time. And lo and behold, this is why I have faith in America, Todd, and faith in yours. Jose Cabranes, a Clinton appointee who was on the Second Circuit, happened to be in New Haven and picked up a newspaper and saw that our case was disposed of. And he said, hold on a second. I never even seen this case. He asked for the embankment hearing, and while we lost on embank, Jose Cabranes wrote a dissent that actually asked the Supreme Court to take it. If it wasn't for one article like what your paper's doing in Connecticut, what you're doing on this podcast, if it wasn't for that, we would have lost. There would have been no Ricci versus DeStefano. We made it to the United States Supreme Court, and we won essentially on summary judgment, which led to promotions of qualified whites, Hispanics, and African Americans who earned the promotion. I used to work in a socioeconomic deprived area of the city that was Spanish, where English was a second language. Respect is the universal language. If you treat people with respect, they know you care. You can break down barriers. We want firefighters, teachers, cops, politicians, judges to have merit. You can't lift somebody up by holding them down. We want equal opportunity, but that doesn't guarantee equal outcome. And if somebody puts their hand on the scale, be it racism, cronyism, nepotism, then we have the courts to sort that out. But we can't socially engineer a fire department, a police department, or a school system. And if we really want to increase and protect kids in America, and we got to focus on education, and our education system in Connecticut and across the country is failing our kids.
Totally. So what's been the consequence of the case? Have you seen real world impact on the ground?
Oh, we've seen real world impact on the ground with fire department, police department cases, what Harvard did for education, the Ricci case did for employment. Most people, like the public, thinks that this one case solves all problems. No, you'll see, especially with civil rights cases, even if you look at, the Brown decision, everything else, even from the 60s, they're ladder cases. One case builds on another. So ours took care of employment. Harvard took care of education. But what we were missing is everybody was trying to get around the court cases to still game the system. So we had the law on our side now to put merit first. But what we didn't have was the policy that was actually putting merit first. And now that's what we have with the Trump administration at this time, is they're trying to put the policy. It takes more than one thing to make a system work.
Yeah, totally. So how are they trying to stop that from happening? Because there's been a lot of directives we're going to talk about a story a little bit later here about DEI in the military, where it's still happening. So, what tactically are they doing to the other side to try to keep this going in the areas that you see?
On employment tests, one thing they do is they try to make the written test that measures cognitive ability. They try to make it so that they don't set the pass rate until they actually evaluate people's races. And most people even taking the test don't know that. So the pass rate might actually be a 50 when it's supposed to be a 70. You have to have a basis of knowledge. So they try all of these different schemes to gear the thing. They try to do assessment centers, and they try to make it so they don't, even in a traditional interview, there's departments out there for police, fire, teachers, where they won't ask you about your personal background. They say it's leveling the playing field, but they don't want to know what you accomplished in your career. They don't want to look at your personnel file, your accommodations. So they're still trying to play games, but we're pushing hard against that. And we see what they're doing in the courts with these injunctions, essentially. Not speaking as a fellow from Yankee, but as an individual, I write for the Daily Caller. I've written about these injunctions. It's what they couldn't accomplish in the ballot box. They're trying to accomplish now through judicial fiat, and it's just wrong, Todd.
So, Frank, what else do you want to get out? And I want to have you back when we're back in the studio to talk about this stuff more. But what else do you want to get out today?
Well, I would love to come back and meet you in person. You're doing great work. Talk to you in the studio. You got a great publication, and we really appreciate what you're doing. And like I said, remember, Connecticut and California and Washington matter to the rest of the country because this is their proving ground. So it's important for bad policy. And politics, it's not about one party or the other, because both parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, put back forth bad policy. We need common sense, America first policy that's going to help workers, help business, help America, and we need to get this country on the right track. And I really appreciate spending time with you today, Todd, and I hope I get the opportunity to meet you.
Yeah, we'll do that soon, but thank you, and everybody can find your article on the Connecticut Sentinel, and I guess they can find you there, or is there anywhere else you want to be followed, X or anything like that?
The best place to find me or DM me is on it's Frank Ricci DC, and check out my book Command Presence. And before I leave, I just have to compliment your staff at the Connecticut Sentinel. Jackie was phenomenal. I don't want to mispronounce her last name, but the reason I chose the Sentinel over a national publication was I had to ask for a little grace and a little courage and say, I got to get this out, but I can't tell only part of the story. So I'm going to exceed that 600 words. And she had the courage and the grace to say, you know what? I think this is a story worth telling. We need to get it out. And I heard there's a rumor that maybe being asked about that very article right now as we speak, federal deposition in Boston. I don't know. It's a rumor, but I hear he's getting posted.
Wow. Well, that we're known at CDM for across all of our 13 different sites for that kind of reporting and telling the truth and not being scared to talk about issues. We're not paid by Pfizer or anybody else, so we don't have any roadblocks as far as that stuff's concerned. But Frank, thank you very much. We'll have you back soon, I hope. Take care.
Yeah, Todd, I'd love to come on and as like Frank, the past firefighter, and bring on a New York City firefighter and a Seattle firefighter, because the pandemic's over, but so is the careers. So are their careers, and I think you could give a voice to them because everybody's afraid to talk about that.
Well, love to. We'll talk soon. Take care, Frank.
Thank you. Keep up.